Three words, a much bigger meaning. In the Other Wes Moore, One Name, Two Fates, Wes Moore allows the readers to develop an idea and understanding of what environment, education, and expectations can do for the lives and well-being of young men. Moore 1 made this novel a subtle learning experience, though we thought it was just a story about two men who grew up with the same name. While we were busy feeling bad for both Moore 1 and 2, we learned from their mistakes and tell ourselves that what they did was wrong, that we won't become this kind of person, and that we will make something of our future. But it all truly depends on who you listen to when everyone is talking in your ear. Ultimately, by developing and understanding the idea of what the difference between environment, education, and expectations, the reader is going to begin to realize that the choices people make during the early years of their life can make the difference between jail and freedom or success and failure. According to Merriam-Webster, the word environment means the conditions that surround someone or something, or the conditions and influences that affect the growth, health, progress, etc. of someone or something. Throughout the story, it was portrayed that both Moore 1 and 2 grew up in environments that were similar, each of which being impoverished neighborhoods. According to Moore 1, the Murphy homes were built in 1962 and named after George Murphy, but just as often they went by a self-explanatory nickname murder homes. Considering that this was a part of the neighborhood where Moore 2 was around Tony when he was selling drugs, I feel that this influenced his decision to sell drugs in his future. But it wasn't long after his mother found the drugs that Moore 2 decided to join the Job Corps. While being in this honest and hardworking environment, he began to think about his children and how much of their lives that he had missed. He still wanted to protect them. Moore 1 says all Wes could think about was his daughter. Without a thought about what he was taking on, he announced that he wanted to build her a house. No, a house big enough for her to get in. A house to protect her. For the rest of Moore 2's time in the Job Corps, he changed his ways. He worked hard on his project for his daughter. He was honest and living a now healthy lifestyle. This was the type of environment he needed in order to stay clean and off the streets. This was the type of man he needed to be in order to be the role model and father that his children needed, though it didn't stay that way once he got home. Moore 2 was wrapped up in his financial stress and went back to the only thing he knew how to do. Wes returned to the kitchen. He reached into the refrigerator and pulled out the baking soda. Muscle memory kicked in as he tapped the side of the box and poured 3 ounces of the baking soda into the black pot, watching the powder swirl and fall to the bottom. He placed the baking soda back in the refrigerator. Taking a deep breath before picking up the package, he took a bound plastic bag out of the brown paper wrapping. He squeezed the package, testing its density. He reached over to the drawer that held his cutlery and pulled out a knife, brought the blade to the corner of the plastic bag. As the baking soda swirled in the rapidly heating pot, Wes held the plastic bag with both hands and poured in 9 ounces of cocaine. This just goes to prove that the role of the environment in Moore's life was too great for him to fight the urge of going back to selling drugs. Like Moore 2, I grew up in an environment that was filled with an alcoholic father and a mother who dropped out of college. It was different for me, though. I didn't use the poor situation as an excuse to act out and become a bad person. I saw how many issues my parents had with money, and I knew that I didn't want to have that kind of struggle in my life. But I didn't want to go about getting it in an illegal way. So I rose above the bad environment that I was raised in and began to make something of myself at an early age. As Merriam-Webster says, education is the knowledge, skill, and understanding that you get from attending a school, college, or university. To most, education is a very important part of their lives. Not only does it provide basic knowledge needed to survive, but it allows you to have the opportunity to go above and beyond so you can succeed in life. If you are a child growing up in a household with parents who didn't try in school, it is likely to say that you also won't try because you never had someone pushing you to do your best. So it makes sense to me that Moore 1 and 2 didn't do too well in school to begin with, especially because Moore's mother dropped out of college and went to party right after that. The next day, she called John Hopkins and let them know that she was dropping out. This was the result of Moore's mother's Pell Grant falling through. Once this happened, he lost the chance of having someone with an education raise him because, along with his mother dropping out, his father was an alcoholic who dropped out of high school. Without a stable and steady education, he began to fall in with a bad crowd of people. Merriam-Webster says, an expectation is a belief that something will happen or is likely to happen. Everyone has an expectation for one thing or another. This allows us to have standards that we hold people to when we want them to do something. Expectations and education go hand in hand sometimes, especially for Moore 1. Most of our parents want us to do well in school and make more of ourselves than they did for themselves. It is an expectation and standard that our parents told us to. This really applied to Moore 1 because when his mom saw that he was slipping in school and that he was getting in trouble with the police, she sent him to military school. Moore 1 writes, "After a moment, I broke the awkward silence by telling him my mother had begun to threaten me with military school if I didn't get my grades and discipline together." This to me is why I think Moore 1 progressed and made so much of himself. He took what his mom had to say to heart, thrived in military school, and achieved his mother's expectations. It wasn't just Moore's mom who wanted the best for her children, though. In the novel, Mary's mother, Moore 2's grandma, had an expectation for her. Moore 1 says, when Mary told her mother that she was pregnant at age 16, Alma said, "I don't care, you are going to finish school and go to college." Though Mary's situation was much different than a regular student because she was pregnant, her mother still wanted what most mothers want. She wanted her daughter to do something that she regretted not doing, go to college. Education is so much more than just learning the everyday academics. When I first moved to Barberton, I was so far ahead of most kids in my grade that the school wanted to move me from the 2nd grade to the 3rd grade. My parents did not think that this was a good idea because they didn't want me mixing with the older kids since I was still very unsure of the new school system that I was still uncomfortable with. Ever since this, I have always worked hard in school to make sure that I was able to obtain the degree I want to have when I get older. I always make sure I do not have any missing work and that I am prepared when it comes to tests and quizzes. It's not really the expectations that my parents have for me that push me to do my best. It's the expectations I have for myself that push me to do my best in school. Education is going to be my number one priority until I get my degree. While analyzing the story of these two men, it seemed fair to say that the environment each Wes grew up in their earlier years were identical. However, the education between the two was extremely different. Moore 1 eventually saw that the more positive things he chose to do with his life, the better off he was becoming. He chose to leave the criminal life behind and overcame a lot of the obstacles he had thrown in his path. He let his decisions and his environment, education, and expectations give him the option between life and death, jail and freedom, and success and failure.